Wrestling fans, William Patrick Corgan here of the National Wrestling Alliance. You are listening right now to me give away all the skinnies on our upcoming pay-per-views, August 28th, 29th, from the Chase in St. Louis, only on Fight. You're listening to the Battleground Podcast.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Battleground Podcast. Today is an exciting day because we are bringing back a guest on the show. But before we bring that guest on, let me bring my co-host Eli on. Look at that, Eli. What's up, buddy?
Well, we're having some technical difficulties, but we're hanging in there.
We're hanging in there. And if you're watching this on YouTube right now, as you can see on Eli's hoodie, you kind of have a guess of what's happening on the show. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest. The president of the NWA, Mr. Billy Corgan, is on the show. Billy, thanks for being here with us, man.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We are super excited. Last time we had you in, we were in studio, and this is kind of right as the NWA resurgence was happening. You had an acoustic show here in Nashville, and this was when the whole 10 Pounds of Gold thing was happening, which was an amazing series, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much kicked us off in terms of the new era of the NWA. So it's weird because now we're fully functional, basically running content, about 50 plus weeks a year. So it's a long way from there, but I'm very appreciative of those times because, it allowed us to figure out who we were pretty early in the process.
For sure.
Right.
And we were big fans of the NWA when it all started coming back. Like, I know Eli's a big guy for the NWA, right?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. I was trying to work my magic to go to the St. Louis shows, and I don't think I'm gonna make it happen. Which I'll get to watch it on pay-per-view. But yeah. So I think the first question we wanted to ask, just because I know a lot of it you're going to kind of keep close to the chest, which I can't blame you, but what do you think was the lowest point for the NWA once COVID hit and all, a lot of the positive momentum that you guys had created had halted? I mean, you heard rumors and, you had talent going to other places. I mean, was it like really, really dire, or was it just what do you think was the lowest point for you guys for 2020?
I think for me, it was more whether or not I wanted to continue. I was very transparent behind the scenes about wanting to say, look, this deserves my full effort. And this is very complicated. I signed on to rebuild a wrestling company. I didn't sign on to rebuild a wrestling company during a pandemic. And for anybody who owns a business, obviously I have other businesses. It's been a very difficult time for everyone. So I'm not crying poor or anything. It was just like, do I really, really, really want to do this? And the good part of it is coming out of it, I felt like, yeah, I really, really do want to do this. And I think I came out with a renewed sense of purpose and vision. And I think you see that with what's happening now.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And, being big wrestling fans that we are, and we love that NWA was back, the old school studio taping and everything like that. And of course, with 2020 being just a crazy year with COVID, was there any plans to kind of like continuing on with Power with like that empty studio audience, kind of like everybody else was doing, with especially strong safety protocols, or what was kind of the plan for that one?
Well, my initial reaction was I didn't want to run in an empty studio. Of course, maybe I believed a little bit of the propaganda that this wasn't going to go on that long. So I was like, let's just try to ride this out and kind of see where this goes. Because, even though it's been bad, it was also predicted it was going to be far, far worse.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily want to be in a situation where I tried to slug my way through it. And then I got myself in a situation where we couldn't back out and then we were in too deep. So it's a bit of a wait and see, which I think at the end of the day was probably the correct decision. But, day by day, that was a difficult circumstance to navigate because, as I said before, like nobody really knew where this was going. Right. And I credit, I credit Tony Khan, for example, for continuing to run. He allowed us to, have some stuff with him on television that helped. So I credit anybody who was capable of running WWE, of course. I think the business needed to keep moving, but, I wasn't in a situation where I could sort of power my way through it.
And I got to say, during the pandemic, I mean, what you did with Carneyland was fantastic. I mean, all the little micro contents here, there, and there, and there, it still kept the brand going, which was great, by the way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, Carneyland was a fun idea, and it's something I'd still like to come back around to. But trying to do it remotely in the midst of a pandemic where, again, people were very, very scared, and we didn't have all the information that we have now. I mean, that was really difficult. But the whole idea was just to bring some fun to the brand. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I could say this pretty simply. You know, NWA fans don't want to see me. They don't want to see necessarily our talent being in fun comedy skits. They really want to see them wrestle, which is, you know, of course, where they should be. And I think all that type of content, or even me in this circumstance, talking about it when it's running and there's product in the ring, I mean, that all makes sense. But when you have to make those choices against not having wrestling product, that was difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we originally had one question here, but I think we'll swap it out. So obviously, one of the worst events that happened during the pandemic was the passing of Josephus. He was a friend of ours. We actually met him the day we met you. He was doing video for us in the studio, and then we interviewed him.
I will say a very funny story about Eli. Had no idea that was Josephus at the time when he was in there filming. And Eli's
right.
like, I was sitting there and I was like, that's Josephus. And he's like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
and then he starts
yeah.
going back and forth texting him when he came on the show. And he's like, yeah, I was with Billy that day that I was filming you guys in the studio. And Eli's like,
yeah, well, and it was after the infamous hair match with David Arquette, and I hadn't seen him very often with the short dude. And I you know, and I also didn't know he had the backstage role like that. So you know, he walked up and we were nice to him and everything. And then I think before the interview was over, or when we were done with Billy, I was like, yeah, we're going to talk to Josephus here in a few weeks. And he turned around like, yeah, that's me. Like, oh, dude, what the crap? Yeah, but yeah, he ended up, you know, we had some mutual friends in the Nashville area, just, you know, devastating loss. How has NWA kind of gotten past that? You know, we've kind of done some tributes for him and all that, but I mean, like, that's just a massive loss. Like, how do you keep it going for a company like that when a well-loved personality passes on like that?
Well, you know, the first thing we did is we did a show in tribute to him, which, you know, when you're talking about it, you're sitting there thinking, okay, you know, this close friend of mine's just passed away. You know, is this the right thing to do? Not because you don't want to respect your friend, but you're worried it's going to come off wrong, right?
Right, cash grab, yeah.
Yeah, or just seem kind of crass within the moment, you know? And we live in a very cynical world, obviously. But when we actually had the event and allowing us to kind of publicly celebrate and grieve his loss, I think it was really helpful for the company to kind of turn the page, not in a way that said we're going to forget him, but like say, okay, you know, we've done what we need to do, and the best way we can honor him going forward is to not only preserve his memory, and you know, we have his flag up on the wall when we run. So you know, like literally when you look at the hard cam shot, his flag's the flag you see mostly.
Yeah, that's an awesome touch.
Yeah, I mean, that's our way of honoring him because he was our brother and our friend. But also, you know, he wanted this thing to succeed. You know, he really did. He believed in the vision of the NWA. It was what he grew up on. It was what got him into the business. And so, you know, I'm not saying, you know, he would want us to keep going. I'm not trying to be as cheesy as that. I just think the best way you can honor a friend like that in the situation is to be great and just keep kicking ass, you know?
Yeah,
for sure. And you talk about kicking ass, and NWA has been doing that here recently. Always had open relationships and working with other promotions, but one that seems to kind of be gaining steam, and we were actually at some of the Impact tapings, was that working relationship with NWA and Impact. And of course, you've got a history there with Impact. How did that bridge go about getting mended? Because I mean, every Impact taping we were at, Mickie was there, gung ho, and it was amazing to see her rep that NWA flag there.
And Melina, yeah, we got to see her debut, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all credit to Mickie. You know, she was the one that had the relationships to go back and kind of reopen that door, which, you know, for my end was closed due to some business stuff that had gone on.
Yeah.
And then Pat Kenny, who works behind the scenes in talent relations, has a long-standing relationship with people in Impact. And so I think they just kind of mended the fence, and we found some business to do get together, and they've been a great partner in this. Obviously, Deonna Purrazzo is going to be on the pay-per-view.
That's going to be insane to watch,
by
the way.
Massive match, yeah, massive
Yeah,
match.
and it's a real honor, you know, because I worked, you know, let's not forget I worked for that championship, you know what I mean? So that championship means a lot to me. So to have it on an NWA show is a great honor, and it's a tribute to everybody involved who helped put it together. Because look, I think it's now very obvious. Everybody calls it whatever, the forbidden door or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've been saying it for years. The future of the wrestling business is really people working together, putting together these super cards. And I'm saying this in a fun way. I think it's a shame that WWE doesn't allow it, because I think it would be to the benefit and to the credit of the WWE.
For sure.
I get why the WWE doesn't necessarily want to play with competitors, but I think that's really, in my opinion, that's really old world, old century thinking. I think the 21st century is really about people coming together, showing that under certain circumstances you can work together, and it's to the benefit of the fans, who really, at the end of the day, that's who we're relying on, the fans to stay tuned. And as choices in the marketplace become more complicated, whether it's video games or now movies are being released online, as professional wrestling has to fight its way through, a complex media landscape, I think things like super cards and special appearances and stuff like that are what can make the fans stay engaged. So I don't see it as a negative, but again, I'm not running a billion-dollar company. So I can appreciate and respect their choices, but I still think wrestling would be a lot more fun, and you'd see a lot more fans at the table if there were circumstances by which everybody could work together. Even if let's say once a year wrestling came together, just one day a year, all the major wrestling companies came together just to raise money for charity.
That would be amazing.
How amazing would that be? Nobody would lose. It's not like a wrestling fan who's a fan of one company doesn't know about the other companies, right? It's not like we don't live in that world anymore. Why can't we have one day a year of unity or something, where the top talent from all the companies come together and really show the world that, yes, for this one day we can put aside our differences and our differing agendas, and really help, inspire, build. That's the world that I want to help create, and that's why, when I look at somebody like Tony Khan, he's been a great partner in that for me, and now with Impact being a great partner in this event, and we've also been working with AAA and Conan behind the scenes. So at least in that circumstance, we have all three of those companies represented during the pay-per-view weekend.
Man, I'm just excited for the whole weekend coming up. I mean, you've got the 73rd anniversary show, you've got EmPowerrr, and I mean, I don't know how you're going to be able to sleep that weekend at all. Everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is actually pay-per-view days tend to be more calm than TV taping days. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually true. I used to be so surprised when I would work with what was TNA Impact. Pay-per-view days were easy peasy. It's basically just about the show. Aren't a lot of pre-tapes. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. It's the TV days that are madness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What does that usually look like for a TV taping? Because I mean, we went to the Impact tapings a couple days ago, and they did like a 3 to 6 and then a 7 to 10. Is that kind of the structure that you guys do when you do your TV tapings after the pay-per-views, or is it just a continuous all-day thing?
Right. No, we've done it all. We've done 2 a days, but this time around we're doing kind of 3.5 hours ish for both nights in St. Louis. We'll probably tape some other stuff during the day without a crowd. But yeah, you're talking about, trying to shoot on the fly. And you're talking about 50 different wrestlers coming in and out of the ring, referees, everybody, not to mention announce teams, technical issues. You're trying to put 3.5 to 4 hours of content in a can in a given day. That's a lot of content to shoot on the fly.
Yeah. Well, you kind of did a perfect segue there, talking about Mickie and Impact and stuff. So, on paper, the pairing of the NWA Mickie James is a no-brainer for obvious reasons. How did this come about? Was it just, I'm sure Nick had something to do with it, but specifically also, like, how much leeway is she going to have concerning the women's division? I mean, is she the boss in that regard, or can you shine some light on that?
Sure. Well, as far as Mickie as a talent, Mickie wants to remain a free agent, which, as a friend of hers, I think is totally a wise business decision. Of course, if she wants to sign exclusive to the NWA, I would welcome that. But I think it's a good decision for her, given exactly what we were talking about. She should be available on the open market to work with whomever she wants to in whatever way she wants to choose. She's earned that. So I applaud her for that. As far as behind the scenes, yeah, she's definitely in a leadership role. I wouldn't constrain Mickie to any one. Obviously, she's very involved in what's happening in the women's division currently, but I wouldn't constrain her to that. I want someone of Mickey's skill set behind the scenes helping make the entire brand better. The NWA very much in the terms of the office is very much everybody's behind pushing this cart up the hill, and the number one demand is to make the product as good as it can be and distinctive as it can be, because we really feel, and I've said this publicly a few times, that our future lies in being a different type of product than everybody else is running. There are trends in wrestling just like there are trends in music. I tend to believe that the future trend in music, the future trend in wrestling will be the more traditional trend, which is more of a mainstream product. I know people are very much in love with what's happening right now in wrestling, as they should be. It's a very exciting time. But traditionally, if you look at the business over 100 years, the stuff that the bigger audience in the mainstream market will turn out for are the biggest stars, and I mean physically too, fighting over the biggest prizes. That's the way it is in the UFC. There are exceptions. For every Kenny Omega and Conor McGregor, there's a Drew Galloway, or Roman Reigns. Basically, very skilled talents who are huge, and they're very good at what they do. So I tend to believe in that philosophically, and that's not something I'll be changing anytime soon.
And that's a good thing to have. Of course, NWA EmPowerrr is happening August 28th. NWA 73rd anniversary show August 29th on Fight. You can watch that. And you talk about growing talent and having good talent. And there's been some new talent that's been getting quite the buzz in the ranks of NWA. You've got Slice Boogie, the tag teams of the end in particular. What are you looking for in new talent for the NWA?
Well, I think it's twofold, and this goes back to the traditional model. They have to be able to work at a very high level, and they have to be able to talk, because we're very much built around stories. And so if you look at our roster, pretty much up and down, pretty much everybody's good on the microphone and can tell those stories, and then tell those stories in the ring. And so if you have size and you can work, I always point out to a guy I grew up with, Jerry Blackwell, who was, not exactly in shape, very skilled guy. I'm looking for those types of talents that maybe some of the other federations don't, see as TV ready or whatever. I don't care. I want the biggest, roughest, toughest people, be they male or female.
Right. And I think a lot of people forget that, one of the biggest stars, not only in the business, but also particularly with the NWA, Dusty Rhodes. I mean, he didn't fit a lot of molds. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that he didn't really pass as, but I mean, he was one of the biggest draws in the 70s and 80s, So I think there's those diamonds in the rough, those guys that don't look like Roman Reigns, but they still can tell that story and they can still go in the ring and all that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an incredible amount of talent that doesn't fall within the kind of the interests of the main companies right now. And consequently, they tend to also fall in line with the kind of talent that I'm looking for. So I feel very comfortable with the fact that we can work with these talents and not only sort of realign them into the NWA vision, but also give them an opportunity where, as you've seen with some of the talents that have moved on from the NWA, that we're also in a position to get talents hired into bigger situations. And I think that's actually a good fit for us in the current scheme. We don't have a major TV deal. We have a great deal with Fight. But we're obviously not on a major network. So I think creating an almost a system for talent to prosper, if they should move on from the NWA or become NWA stars that are signed to contracts, I think it's a really, really comfortable fit for us.
Yeah. So this is a shock, but it was a good shock. That's a good change of pace. So one of the big shocks for the NWA earlier this year was the signing of Kylie Ray, and that also signaled her coming out of retirement. How big of a signing was that for you guys, and what are you looking forward to from her in the future in the NWA?
Sure. Incredibly talented young woman. We were lucky in that we were able to craft a deal with Impact to acquire her contract. She's what they used to call a blue chipper or whatever. You know what I mean? She's a superstar in the making. She'll go as far in this business as she wants to go. She has every skill set you can imagine. She has the innate charisma and the in-ring ability of a future legend. Now, whether or not she can, persevere, the business has a lot of challenges. I can speak on both for wrestling and music. So I'm very, very empathetic to how the business can put a person in kind of a particular corner, and they might find it hard to persevere over those things. But I think she has everything that you need. And hopefully she's in a positive, happy position, particularly with the NWA, where she'll want to keep making that choice going forward with us. So we're very excited. She's part of our world. She's a total pleasure to deal with. And she's one of those people, when she's in the ring, I truly pay another degree of attention. She just has that extra ability that I can't quite put my finger on what it was or is. I saw the same thing with Thunder Rosa, using another recent example. There's just something about the X Factor charisma that they have, where you just pay that little bit of extra attention. She absolutely has that.
For sure. And, Kylie's going to be a part of the big weekend coming up. And let's kind of dive into the big weekend. NWA EmPowerrr, NWA 73, right around the corner next weekend. So it's right upon us, and it's taking place at the Chase Park Plaza in historic St. Louis. What are you most excited about for these two big, huge events?
Man, that's a tough question. We're having some posters made, and I just wrote the cards out for both shows, and I was like, man, these shows are totally loaded. and by the way, they're two pay-per-views back to back. For anybody that's interested, Fight's offering a special 2-day package. I mean, the shows are it's loaded, man. I mean, there's no fluff, and a lot of big names. I mean, something I would point to, like Diamante coming over from AEW. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Impact World Women's Champion coming over. That's a big deal. I don't know what that sound is.
Is that? Oh,
that's somebody's phone, I believe.
Sorry, I was getting a phone call.
I think that's CM Punk calling you, Eli, just to
give
the heads up on.
Yeah,
he's letting you know tonight.
He's checking in. Yeah, he's checking in. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Layla,
it's like asking you to pick which one's your favorite kid. It's hard.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, Layla Hirsch from AEW versus Camille.
Ooh, there's
no mistake there that Layla's a legit shooter.
Oh yeah.
I love Layla's attitude coming out of that. Like, I don't care how big you are, I'm going to kick your ass. Right? I love that. I want to see that.
The visual kind of that David versus the Goliath thing. Too.
Yeah, and Camille's a jacked up, crazy woman. Let me tell you.
Well,
and in studio.
Yeah, and her appearance on Dynamite not too long ago. I mean, Twitter was going crazy. They're like, "Who the crap is that?" Like, well, okay. you need to be watching NWA.
It's the hidden gem out of Clarksville.
Yeah. Welcome to the world of Camille. And obviously for NWA fans, Camille is very familiar. Nick Aldis versus Trevor Murdoch. Trevor putting his career on the line. I thought that was crazy. It's something he insisted on doing, even though he didn't have to. I was not a fan of that, but I think Trevor believes this is a defining moment for him.
That's been such an interesting story too, by the way.
Yeah, and you want to talk about a contrast of personalities, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
couldn't be farther from. I mean, talk about two different worlds clashing. La Rebellion from AAA with Mecca will go back to in the Chicago Indies for over a decade. He's made himself as a star in Mexico. Them coming in from AAA to face Stevens and Kratos. I mean, gosh, I don't know. There's about 8-10 matches on there. I think those are easy, could steal the show type matches. And usually when you look at a card, you say maybe one or two. There's a lot of matches. And I think the stakes, the pressure, the history with the chase. Of course, we're going to have Ric Flair in the building. For 73.
Sorry,
I mean,
I had to.
I'm sorry, but I think the intensity of those that night will be world class. Having the Nature Boy there, obviously a big deal. With EmPowerrr, I'm bringing the Burke belt, the original Mildred Burke belt, which I purchased, into the ring for the first time probably since 1954 or so.
Oof,
by the way, seeing the photos that everybody's been posting with you in that belt, that thing looks beautiful.
It's pretty cool. Miss Burke had it at one point because according to her granddaughter, the gold was flaking off at the gold plating. So she had it recast in a kind of some type of silver.
Mm.
And she changed some of the verbiage on the belt, but underneath that plating and underneath some of the plating that she had changed over the top is the original, because it was originally welterweight women's champion, I think, was 1936 or something was the original belt. You can see those photos. So I'm going to try to have that belt restored to its original form.
That's going to be great.
But look, just the history between Ric Flair and the era that he brings into the ring, and then the history that the Mildred Burke represents, her belt. I mean, you're talking about literally spanning the entire history of the NWA. So we're representing hard, and we want to give. I said to somebody the other day, we want to give fans not only something of value, but to sort of define why we're different. What it is about the NWA, and I think these shows sort of it's like a clear example. Like, here's who we are. We're not going to change. We've been this way for 73 years. And our motto is, tougher, bigger, better, faster. And that's the way we're going to go up, or that's the way we're going to go down.
For sure.
Well, and I think buying the Burke was, arguably that would have been enough news heading into the weekend. I mean, that's a historical piece of history, and obviously it's been brought back to prominence with Allison Kay, Thunder Rosa, now Camille. But you did mention a certain former champion that would be making an appearance, Mr. Ric Flair. I'm kind of surprised it's taken him this long to come back. It's been probably over 30 years since he's done anything in NWA related.
Well, I've heard different dates. Some person said 1989, maybe because that was the end of him working with Crockett, and then maybe WCW. So I guess it's hard to say, because obviously some people consider the WCW lineage to be part of the NWA story.
I did too.
Yeah, so I'm not here to debate it. I think to even have to debate it is awesome, because, right, there's so much history there.
Yeah. Well, how did that appearance come about? I mean, did he reach out to you guys? Did you guys reach out to him? That's a massive, get, I think, especially prior to you being in control of NWA. I think he's really synonymous with that brand,
Sure. Well, I know that NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis had lunch not too long ago with Conrad Thompson, who, of course, everybody knows Conrad from his success in podcasting.
If somebody doesn't know Conrad, I don't know what they've been living under a rock.
Yeah. Well, God bless, but Conrad's also, he's a member of the Flair family via marriage. And so I believe it was right around the time that Mr. Flair had left his relationship with the WWE. So I think maybe there was some poking around during that lunch about, do you think this is something Rick might be interested in? And so I think that opened up the channel to talking behind the scenes about whether or not we could put it together. And obviously it did happen, and I'm very excited. There's lots of things you do in wrestling where you kind of cross your fingers and you hope for the best.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome responsibility to run the NWA with history. It's no mistake that I care about the history of the business, not just the NWA's history. And there are only certain moments in life where you can put those pieces together, where you connect all those dots. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Flair coming back to the NWA, specifically in the Chase, specifically on the 73rd anniversary show. I mean, that is an awesome thing to be able to sign off on, and then to bring the Burke belt back into an NWA ring, probably for the first time in 70 something years.
Yeah.
Those that again, awesome things to sign off on. And I hope this is just the beginning of 1,000 awesome things.
For sure. And speaking of the Burke belt, we had some fellow friends of ours that submitted a question that wanted to ask you, and they submitted it via video. So I'm going to play that for you. And they just want to ask you a quick question about the Burke belt.
Hey, Billy. This is Keith White from Mixed Tag, recording apparently in Stu Hart's dungeon. And I was curious, you just brought back the title that Mildred Burke held and are giving her some long overdue respect and recognition. And I was just curious, what other NWA star from the past do you feel like is overdue for some recognition?
Well, that's a great question. I don't even know where I would start, I think it's a shame that the some of the early legends of the NWA have kind of been, erased due to time, and that's not because they weren't accomplished. It's because they don't sort of fit in the WWE's particular narrative because of the way that the WWE, what WWF left and became their own entity outside the NWA. So that narrative, the narrative of professional wrestling over the last 70 years tends to be dominated by the WWE narrative, as is their desire, and I can't blame them. But when you look at some of the early champions, particularly of the 50s, I could sit here and rattle names for 10 minutes. So it's my hope that through documentaries and some historical perspectives, maybe even some podcasting, we can explore that era and help people really appreciate how the NWA not only came into being, but the stars that were part of the NWA, whether it's a Luthez or Sweet Daddy Siki or, gosh, Bobo Brazil, or it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah,
sure.
WCW actually, and this might have been like right before the WCW NWA thing ended, I'm not sure, but they actually had the Pat O'Connor tournament in about 90 or 91. And Pat O'Connor obviously was an NWA world champion. He actually held the NWA world champion and the AWA world champion at the exact same time, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I just remember that tournament. I want to say the Steiner brothers won that tag team tournament. So it was always kind of cool to, you guys are obviously with the Crockett Cup, you kind of already have something that kind of goes back to your past. But I think a little, 30-minute documentary or like a podcast where you could really deep dive into that stuff. Us fans, we love that stuff. We love hearing about the history. And I think what you just mentioned about Flair coming in, it kind of represents, kind of past, present, and future. Kind of that one event's going to kind of tie everything together, for one event. So.
Sure, and just think of Ric Flair's namesake, the original Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Arguably the most influential wrestling star of the 20th century.
Especially concerning heels. People are still following his playbook now.
If you look at Buddy Rogers' in-ring style, his promos, the way he carried himself, you're still seeing Buddy Rogers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there really wasn't a Buddy Rogers before Buddy Rogers.
Mm-mm.
So that's what I'm saying. If you're a wrestling fan and those names don't roll off your tongue, that's not your fault. That means people like me have not educated you to make you understand how rich this history is and why it's really important.
Right.
For sure. So real quick before we let you go, where is the best place people can keep up with you or the NWA? Where would you like for everybody to find for more information?
Well, it's always best to follow us on Instagram or Twitter. We update those multiple times a day. That's where you're going to find any kind of breaking news and, everything from merch discounts and programming updates and stuff like that. So you follow us, obviously, come with us on Fight. We have a very modest subscription model. NWA Power fans are very happy with the product. And if you're wondering where the product is, maybe you saw it before when we were free on YouTube. We just put a free show up on YouTube not too long ago. It's done a pretty good view count, which tells me people are still interested beyond what we're doing on Fight, which is great because we want people coming with us to Fight. There's no secret we're in an interesting model. We're trying to build the company, working with Fight and working on pay-per-view. We're probably the only major company that's out there that's not owned by $100+ millionaire. So, it's not begging. We want to outpace any expectation that a fan would have. And I think, again, if you look at this weekend in St. Louis, the 28th and 29th, and if you're coming, either Fan Fest both days, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Chase, we're over delivering. We're over delivering. As Nick Aldis pointed out to me yesterday when we announced Mr. Flair being part of NWA 73, he said, this is pretty amazing that we're adding Ric Flair to a show that's already sold out.
For sure.
Yeah. You didn't even need the star power.
Yeah. God bless. But my point, I hadn't even thought of it because all I could think of was I just want to give the best show for the fans.
Yeah.
And I got to say, having Bush sponsor the show is the best thing ever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we found out today we have another sponsor coming on board. I can't announce that yet, so it's really exciting. First time we've ever had sponsorship opportunities. So things are really clicking. And thanks you guys. You guys were there in the beginning, and hopefully we'll talk many more times as this thing continues to grow.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
And once again, thank you for coming on the show today. And we look forward to the big shows coming up on August 28th and 29th, which, by the way, you can watch on Fight. And thanks to Fight, which, by the way, we are really good friends with them as well as you are. We actually have a code for our listeners that are watching this that they can win to watch the NWA this weekend. So definitely check us out on Twitter, Battleground IHR. And if you don't win, buy, because you can't buy tickets because it's sold
stacked.
out. So
It's stacked.